Well, what do I say? It's supposed to be Happy Easter. It feels more of a wake, but good to see you, John, because we're here because of that item right next to me.
Yeah,
It
good to
dropped.
see.
Yeah, it dropped today, 1.58 million for those who've just woken up and you're thinking, am I reading that correctly? But if you do the maths, as I was just saying to John earlier, that's 470,000 viewers Doctor Who was lost in a week, John.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Easter RTD viewers hunt. Everybody, welcome.
Yeah. Talk about an Easter hunt. I know. But you see, John, this is getting alarming. If you were a bad wolf or the BBC, or well, I think Disney's out. If you
Yeah,
really think about it, if 2 million's your figure, if they're happy with 2 million, because they keep changing the rules,
yeah.
they've lost basically just about 25% in 1 week. You cannot afford to do that over the season.
No, I mean it's by, like you say, that every week they change their viewpoint on what is acceptable. It's a constantly evolving thing with them. But again, we're now at a stage where it's just an embarrassment for the BBC. And, when you're talking about production costs for a show like this as well, even if you take Disney out of the equation, and it's struggling to even make 2 million, it's done. Put a fork in it. It's cooked,
Well, good to see everybody who are wide awake in the thread. I mean, hello. I mean, I just finished at about 2 a.m. We're back. Stephanie Barrett, hello. Same effect as for Boom last year. We were just looking at that. Yes, last year, remember we had the silly double bill, Space Babies and Devil's Card. And Devil's Card got 2.42 million, and then the week after, 2.04 for Boom. So they lost just short of 400,000. This is bigger. But we've got more to say. I mean, if we look at this, and then me and John want to ask the thread, what is the fundamental reason this is tanking so dramatically? I will have one caveat. If I was coaching RTD, it is Easter, and as many people who are off and about as captive audiences, equally they're distracted and holidaying. So there's that little thing, because as John quite rightly said before we started today, after Boom, 73 yards jumped by almost 500,000 up. So, there's that. But it gets worse, John. 1.56, well, it's 1.58 actually. Fourth on BBC One, fifth if you count the weather separately from the news, seventh for the day overall. So how low can Disney Who go? And that's from Gary Lee. But here's the stats. The stats are coming in today. We hope to have the 5-minute breakdown tonight for our show at 5:45. But basically, it's behind News at 10. That doesn't market heavily as a global streamer. It's behind Casualty. Now, Casualty's been going forever, but Casualty, I don't watch it anymore, but I think it still gives you what you want if you want to watch Casualty.
Yeah, I think, mate, with this, every single week I hear the excuses of, oh, it's up against, Gladiators. It's a really big show. It's very successful. No Gladiators this week. Every time there's a new excuse of why the viewing figures are going down. Oh, it's going on to a streaming service. Absolute rubbish. The simple fact of the matter is, this show, under the tutelage of Russell T Davies, since he's come back, has failed to entice the general viewing public to watch it. And each week you're seeing people dip out again and again and again. So I'm sorry, but there's only well, I say there's one man to blame, but as I've said to you before, Brendan, in private, I blame the people above RTD, the people who didn't push back and say, no, that script isn't good enough. No, you've got to go back and do some rewrites on it. They're responsible for what has transpired here.
And we're going to look at a fair few stats today just to give us more context, because we appreciate you all joining us on Easter Sunday. Thank you for that. But if you do take a look at the ITV1, that's unusual, isn't it? I mean, your dad is a good old BBC bloke, isn't he? ITV never used to win Saturday nights, a little bit in the 80s maybe. But look at this. Britain's Got Talent, 1% Club, 99 to Beat, and An Evening with Elton John. Elton John is in his mid to late 70s. I mean, he can't sing now, but he's still winning. I have to say, Doctor Who is limping behind Blankety Blank. Doctor Who is limping, getting half the ratings of Britain's Got Talent. And next week, Britain's Got Talent goes live.
Yeah, it's not looking good. I mean, even if for me, even if it gets a bump up in the ratings next week, it's gonna just tank back down again. I again, what was it? Was it 8 episodes this season, isn't it?
Yeah.
Next week, we're into episode 3, so you're already losing a bulk of your viewers before you've even got, halfway.
Well, what's mad is we're 25% of the way through the season, and we've lost 25% of the audience.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, we've all had a chat about looks, and of course, the timing is terrible because whether you like the episode or not, there are so many photographs like the one I've just used there, where basically is that there's the doctor looking for his audience. You could have those 3 fans, those horrible 3 fans. Are there the only 3 left?
Yeah.
There's so many. If you want to go meta, you better be confident about the ratings for your program, because we can throw all these picks back at your RTD. It's
Yeah.
so bad.
I I would say, mate, as well, I'm at a point now of people who keep making these excuses, and RTD's one of them as well. It's very much like the Fourth Doctor in The Mask of Mandragora, where he's debating with Hieronymus and basically saying, well, it depends on whether, the moon is made of cheese.
Yeah.
It's all nonsense, basically. Because it is, data is data, and the data is coming in that people are switching off from this show. People are not engaging with this show. That's the problem, and there's only a few people that are responsible for that problem.
And, and
We're
as
all checking out.
And as Mark Jones says here, the BBC had to blame. They begged RTD to come back because they were clueless. They gave him complete control because they were clueless, with
Yeah.
no interference from anybody. And I don't see signs that Julie Gardner has done what she did in the first era, when she did question his scripts a fair bit and
Mm.
ask him what he was proving. But you see here, if you look at, we've lost 470,000 viewers in 1 week. There's season 1 last year. And I had figures that proved that actually over the season, get this, John,
Yeah.
whether we judge it on overnights, they hate that, whether we judge it on the 7 days, or whether we judge this on the 28 days, that's their preference, isn't it? Well, this is the truth of it, right? So season 1 last year, everybody, on the overnights that we all talk about, it was a 14% drop in ratings over the whole season. So not well done, RTD. Okay, then we don't like those figures. What about the 7 days? An 8.1% drop over the season.
Yeah.
So not very good. And then the last one, the one there, Love John, 28-day figures consolidated, 21.5% drop of ratings over the season. So by what criteria is RTD doing well here?
Well, remember RTD changed his viewpoint several months back, didn't he? And he said, "Oh, it's doing very, very good in this age demographic that we're looking for." By the current metrics that he's got going at the moment, he's basically going to come out of a statement in the next couple of weeks and say, "Yeah, well, it's doing very, very well with the unborn babies in the womb because that's the audience we're aiming for." It's that bad.
Hey,
It's
they thought they found some sort of life form in the universe, didn't they? Some version of water or something. So I think he's hoping to reach that. This is appalling. I have to say, I'm trying to think in which job you would keep your job in this scenario, because we all acknowledge the Chris Chibnall era tanked the show almost to its existential limit. Right.
yeah,
I understand, therefore, in their panic, that the BBC thought, well, he did it once, get him back. But I would have still had him on a leash. He likes leashes. Sutek. So I'd have had him on a leash, and I'd have just kept it tight and just say, but you don't mess with the program, mate. I
yeah,
need somebody streetwise right behind him, like a little
yeah.
gremlin.
I
Um,
I mean, mate, I would also say that, surely to goodness, there must be, you would think that there would be some sort of self-preservation at Bad Wolf or the BBC, especially Bad Wolf, where they've got investors that I'm sure are calling and saying, "What the hell's going on here? What
but you see,
what is
John,
this rubbish you've slopped out?"
aren't
It's
these
ridiculous.
isn't this kind of confirming the rumors, though, John, that
Mm,
when we hear that Disney have already walked,
yeah.
the RTD was almost trying to bully them to come back and do a season 3. and that's got him into trouble to the point where maybe he's not around. There's so many little things going on, and when you think about all that, yeah, people are rats leaving a sinking ship.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you mentioned it before, and it's something that I agree with. Is when you look at the first era of RTD, how many shows did he go off to produce while he was doing Doctor Who? None. And
Yeah.
now he's going off to Channel 4 to do his new series. So, the evidence is there that, not only are Disney giving up, but, the BBC have lost faith in it as well. But the thing is, I know with the BBC is the fact that they don't ever learn the right lessons from all of this. So, they could rest it, but they could still completely cock it up when it comes back because they keep making the same mistakes.
Yeah.
Diversity is key. That is their focus, isn't it now?
Well, I'm just going to bring the thread in for a few minutes, but then I'm going to show an awful lot of interesting stats, everybody, to kind of really get behind why are we losing so many viewers so quickly. Woodhouse 22 there. Remember when Who used to be appointment TV show? It totally needs a rest for the one thing I would say, Woodhouse, is if he's going to absolutely crash Doctor Who in this season, the way it ends will decide in the TV executives' heads of the future whether it comes back quickly or at all. And if it absolutely has an absolute car crash, I think a lot of TV executives would say, we threw money at it, we threw Disney at it, and it crashed. I'm not even touching it with a barge pole.
Absolutely. And that's what I was saying, mate, about the fact that they learn the wrong lessons. They don't look at it and think, maybe we picked the wrong people to produce Doctor Who weren't bringing in talented writers because they didn't think like they did. It's effectively like, yeah, oh, we've thrown money at it. It hasn't worked. Okay, we won't bother doing it. Whereas if you have, to quote, Kirk in Star Trek 3, young minds, fresh ideas to come into the show, then it will be a success again. But the trouble is, we're in a climate now where I think you need several years away for all of that to be purged from the system so that you can come back with a fresh outlook.
Yeah,
That's
I
my
mean,
view.
Matrix Lord, he was on with us last night. Do we sleep, us lot? I don't think the BBC will get rid of RTD. Look, we can all have our theories, but I would have to say, as I said earlier, in which job would you keep it? In this scenario, let's just remind ourselves of the latest. And I could talk about Joy to the World. I could talk again about the whole of season 1, where basically on every metric, he lost between 8% and 20% of the audience in season 1. He lost a whole load at Christmas, and we've now lost another 500,000. I mean, this is beyond sloppy, John.
Oh, it is terrible. I mean, it's it's getting to a point where it's just a complete dereliction of duty, isn't it? Really, I think what Matrix Lord said about Bad Wolf won't get rid of RTD. To an extent, I think he's right, but I do think there comes a time in these, certainly if you're talking Hollywood, where if you're not, if you have an absolute howler, you are put into the sin bin for quite a few years. And I could certainly see that happening with RTD, which is probably why he's hopped off to Channel 4 with his tail between his legs.
Yeah. Now we've got Simon Anthony here. I hope you're well. Now I know he said, "Don't judge it as Doctor Who last night. Just judge it as parody." But while you thought it was brilliant fun, Simon, it was, as I was saying to John just before this started, and I wonder what the thread thinks. I think when a show starts talking to itself, when a show starts going meta. Now, some fans will go all geeky and go, "Oh God, that's so clever." It's not, because it's talking inside to itself. It's not talking outwards. It's not reaching out. What's the point of being with a global streamer and wanting to go global when you start talking to yourself? And meta is that. It's not clever. Some kid in the African continent who's never seen Doctor Who before, but the Disney reach has got to them. As Julie Gardner said, we reach an 8-year-old in Ethiopia. And all of a sudden they're going, I just don't know what it's doing.
Yeah.
You reach a kid in Japan. I just don't know what it's doing. It's not clever at all. It's absolute suicide.
This is a guy that is clearly, I suspect, has clearly watched WandaVision and thought, "Oh, you know what? I'm gonna try and riff off of WandaVision and do that kind of meta commentary." I think he's done that, and I think it's been an absolute failure. Can I just touch on something that Lee Smith said a few minutes ago, which just resonated in my head? You know, this Juno Dawson episode that's coming up. You know,
Oh,
there's been rumors about the fact that this Space Eurovision one is going to be parked on iPlayer because of the football.
hmm.
Well, if the viewing figures are this bad, and that's going to be parked on iPlayer, you're canceling out another episode of the 8 episodes of this series, essentially, because that's not going to do anything.
We
That's
see,
dead
we,
weight.
s- we see, in a way, matching up with the Eurovision night is meta as well. Everything's
Yeah,
going too meta.
it is.
I thought, I've said it before, you want, as a controller of BBC One or ITV, you want to show a variety in your schedule. And to have 3 or 4 hours of a Eurovision for all the geeks who love it, there's an awful lot of people who hate it, and to then have a Doctor Who program before it that actually replicates it. Oh,
Yeah.
how clever. How
Yeah.
clever. I mean, turning people off is not what you want to do. Now, I did promise the thread and yourself that we've got a few metrics here to have a good look at, Glasses. So there's the reminder, everybody. Oh, yeah. Well, hello. This is how bad it's been getting. Now, let me just show you. This was Joy to the World, and I think this is why, everybody, the program is tanking. It's a good example. In the first 30 minutes, whereas, you know, we're waiting for our 15-minute breakdowns, 5-minute breakdowns for today's show. But when we got the last Christmas one, the trailer repeated the pre-credits sequence, didn't it? And we'd seen it all before. A toasty joke, took itself not very seriously. It was all light, fun, frothy music. Remember that? We had Joy in a dull-looking hotel talking to a blooming fly. I mean, who cares about that? The Doctor wanting to get some breakfast. I mean, God, it was high jeopardy, high stakes. I've seen James Bond movies, John, where he jumps off a cliff at the beginning to grab people's attention. Doctor Who here was just having a, scrambled egg on toast.
I
What?
mean, again, it's just, I mean, it's like I've woken up in a parallel universe myself, and I'm seeing shockingly bad Doctor Who, but then I suddenly slap myself in the face and realize, no, it's actually real. The show I've loved all my life is just being decimated by these absolute idiots who are just writing absolute slop.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
So here's the example. I've put in red 3 deaths by suitcase. That was the only bit in that first 30 minutes, which I think is recognizable proper Doctor Who. Then the Doctor wasn't too nice to one of the characters. Then there was some mansplaining. Then the Doctor was a handyman for a year. Again, that's so Doctor Who. It's such a classic. Now, there's my example, John, why I think we are losing every week 500,000, 200,000, 75,000. Take your pick. But it
Yeah.
all adds up over a season to showrunners who are a little bit too clever with themselves.
Yep.
I've said this from the beginning, haven't I, John, that actually I think the showrunners are bored with the Doctor's character. And so what they do is they experiment.
Yep.
They take a risk. They break the formula.
Yeah.
No. Invasion of Time broke the formula for an episode. And I was, as a little kid, I was struggling. I wanted my Tom Baker back. I didn't want him being a nasty, a naughty Doctor. You know, you want predictable TV in that way. That's what Casualty offers.
Yep.
That's what Gladiators offers. That's what Blankety Blank offers. I mean, it's not very good at the moment, but at least you get your Blankety Blank.
I mean, again, you know, I've said to you before in private, you know, when there's something for me before you even get in fully into an episode of, you know, classic Doctor Who, or even sort of, you know, RTD1 Who, there, there's a feel to it. Instantly you think, oh, I'm watching Doctor Who. From what I've seen of Tutti Frutti Shooties Who, uh, there's nothing that feels Doctor Who to me at all. If you took the title off of it and the intro, I would think to myself, I'm watching some sort of soap show about, you know, social commentary. You know, Where's the monsters? Where's the Daleks? Where's the Cybermen? Where's the scares for the kids to hide behind the sofa? That's like, potatoes and gravy
And this
for
is
the
and this is
UK.
and this is why, I mean, just look at the figures. I mean, to give everybody context, yes, we've been talking about this figure, but once I've said that figure 200 times, it's the context of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
620,000 viewers less in 2024 than in 2023's Christmas episode. I mean, people aren't leaving terrestrial TV that fast. Certainly not on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
Wallace and Gromit, as I said in my saloon then, added 4.36 million more views in 10 minutes. So, of course, John, when people moan, saying, oh, people don't watch TV anymore, there's no family audience anymore. Rubbish.
Spot on. Yeah,
Then Doctor
absolutely.
Who lost 550,000 in 10 minutes. Oh, does that sound similar to something we've just been
Yeah.
saying?
I mean, again, it's not, again, you can count things up and go 4 and 4 equals 5. 4 plus 4 equals 5 for these people, but it's not. Data is data. And as I said before, and you've said, the viewing figures continually and consistently are going downwards. Now, that says to you that it's not hitting the interest of the general public. So if the general public are bailing out, regardless of the small minority that are still watching it, a show is not sustainable. So that is the problem. They could spin it as much as they want, but no, that is the problem. It's not about the age demographics. It's about the overall viewing figures overnight. That's what
Yeah.
it comes down to.
And look, I'm big enough to understand that we're not going to get figures like for Horror Fan Rock, and we're not going to get figures like we used to for Ark in Space. I understand that. And we won't get figures like we did for Rose in 2005. Look, we're all clever enough to understand that, and we're not that picky. But we can compare week by week. And I think the killer one, John, is minute by minute. And if you do minute by minute, it just kills any argument they had.
Yeah.
And of course, I do have it here. Let's have a look. You expect me, Mr. Teacher Brendan, that
I'm at a lesson today, everybody.
yeah, this is it, lecture time. But you see, just last week, you had the gladiators there. And of course, gladiators, like a great torch relay, handed the baton of what 3.166 million to Doctor Who suddenly dropped the baton completely by just being such an embarrassing brand. Remember, we lost nearly 1 million viewers before Doctor Who started in its episode 1 after all that marketing. The marketing turned people off.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, what staggers me as well, you're right, talking about the marketing and the PR aspect, Brendan, because, it's struggling to survive. And instead of trying to fight for it with good, positive PR, they started this season by effectively doing what they did last year, which was telling people to touch grass, and people time and time again get fed up with this. And they're like, right, I'm not interested in it. But also, you've got the ones that would give it a chance, that watch the first episode, and they're like, wow, I don't want to be lectured to.
And how many chances right, I mean, oh God, I've got so many figures. I'm going to get myself into a right little his.
He's going full Matrix, everybody.
Yeah, I'm freaking out. This is it. Brendan's on a mission today. But right, the great guru of Doctor Who, RTD, was called back. Like Red Adair used to be called in the 70s to put out fires on the oil rigs. Right, here we go. And look, he got David Tennant and Catherine Tate back, and he got 5.8 million overnight. Then we lost 200,000. Then we lost again on the third one. By the third one, we had lost just short of 400,000 viewers. Yeah?
Yeah.
So there is a track record here, whether it's Catherine Tate, David Tennant, whatever you do. We had the preachy messaging, the whole lot. It is too dramatically, it's too precipitous, the drop, to say this is just part of a cultural change. It's not.
No.
This is actual wanton vandalism of a program, actually not understanding it. And actually, John, I was saying it last night, but I've been saying it for a while, and I think the thread would agree that maybe there was a time that you should do something new with Doctor Who. You know, like when we had Attack of the Cybermen, do 45-minute episodes,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. You know, we know there's a time for that. I think there is now a time to go back to maybe 25, 30-minute episodes, cliffhangers. And if Lux had a nugget of an idea, a good idea, he could have done a 4-episoder. Episode 1 was brilliant. You could have had them trapped in that celluloid film and screaming at it, and then go to episode 1 cliffhanger. Brilliant.
Yeah.
But instead, we just get this wham bam, thank you, ma'am, reset button, a few Easter eggs at Easter. You know, we'll mention various. No. I tell you what, John, I want Doctor Who, the full cake. I
Yeah.
don't just want an Easter egg in the corner where Doctor Who might be mentioned, because that's how it feels, you know. It's a
You're
completely
right.
different program, and then Doctor Who gets mentioned as an Easter egg for all those geeks. No,
Yeah.
I want Doctor Who for the whole program.
Absolutely right. And I think, you know, going back to your point there about, you know, when it came back and you look at the figure for special one,
Yep,
you know, the 60th, you know, and it was building up to it. What was that? That was the Star Beast.
yep,
That was higher, and that was because the general public, you know, and Doctor Who fans, they were willing to give it another try. They said, right, Russell T Davies is back. We're going to give it a go, you know, and there was good faith. But then as soon as you got into that Star Beast episode, and then you had, you know, all of the cobblers with the pronouns and all of that stuff, people started dipping out. And that's been a consistent thing since he came back. You know, people, and it's dropped. There's a correlation there between people being lectured to and people saying, I don't want to watch this. You've got the classic Doctor Who fans, you know, the lifetime Doctor Who fans who are going, do you know what? I actually think I'll just stick with my classic collection now. I'm quite happy with that. So they're going. He's not actually replacing them with new fans that he supposedly was going to go after.
yeah.
So therefore it's cratering. And again, that's the problem,
We
because
see,
the fictional fans that he was after don't actually exist.
but this is it, and everybody, quite rightly, you know, from Rachel to Garbage, I'm mentioning Snow White, because
Yeah.
it's not just the fact that Disney's involved. I don't think Disney's responsible for actually what Doctor Who's done, really.
Yeah.
I know we had our
That's the one
suspicions.
man.
It's
Yeah.
down to RTD, because RTD, last night's episode, Disney wouldn't have known how to write that because it was so meta to itself. But I mean, God, I was so insulted on so many levels. To, you know, was I the toothy, effeminate fan? Was I the wheelchair-bound fan who was very cynical about ratings and all that? Honestly, it was such an insult. Who the hell does he think he is?
Yeah.
And again, it wasn't a look. You know, in the Adventures in Time and Space by Mark Gatiss, he
Yep.
called it a love letter to Doctor Who. And I thought it was. I really enjoyed it. It was lovely, warm,
I loved it.
lovely,
Yeah.
of a great era. But last night's episode, as an example, and current Doctor Who is not a love letter to Doctor Who.
Exactly right. And I think, you know, for me, Brendan, I find the people that preach peace and understanding the loudest are the ones that are less accepting. And if he had come back, I think he could have done it so much different. He could have come back. He could have basically made a show that was effectively inclusive for everybody, and it would have worked. But he hasn't. He's decided from day one to drill down into his own little clique within his bubble. And that is a massive problem for the show because people are not tuning into it. Now, where does it go from here? I think we're going to get. I actually think we'll get an announcement at the end of the final episode within a week. I would say, of them saying that, you know, the show's being rested. I don't think they'll wait for the war between the land and the we, or whatever it's called. You know.
Do you know what? Do you know what they should say, John? You know, Doctor Who fans, we're obsessed about missing episodes. Well, I think
Yeah.
we should obsess about missing fans.
Yeah,
It's like, where are the missing fans?
the vanishing.
Yeah, we'll be looking for them in Saudi Arabia, in
Yeah.
Iran. We'll be looking. Are there any missing fans here?
I've just got you know, I forget which show it is out of the top of my head, but I've just got this image. I think it might have been Stargate Continuum, where they're standing next to someone and then suddenly they're erased from existence and they disappear just in a blur. I think that's what's happening with these missing viewers. They're just like popping out of existence as they sat on the sofa with you, you know.
Yeah, I mean, because last night some people would have said, "Oh, some people liked it." I mean, I have to acknowledge some people liked it.
Yeah,
For about 20 minutes, it could have been seen as a recognizable-ish Doctor Who episode, but I wouldn't go to town. But then it went crazy.
yeah.
But I think, I mean, I'm just looking at my figures over here. What was one of the worst ever Doctor Who stories? Legend of the Sea Devils. That was only 3 years ago, everyone. Can I just say that again? Has society and culture changed so much that in 3 years, when we look in envy at the ratings of Legend of the Sea Devils, Legend of the Sea Devils overnight got 2.2 million. We are 700,000 away from that now with the
Yeah.
great RTD. Oh,
I mean, again, there's kind of a bit of a bit of wonder about the fact that he brought it back successfully with his team, and now he's tanking it, and it's going to be cancelled under him. You know, that's quite the circle of life. You know, and I think the viewing figures, mate. I mean, again, we're well beyond that safety line now. You know, we are now in the pits of hell. You know,
but you see, John, every time I get a 5-minute breakdown, and I'm trying to get the 5-minute breakdowns for our 5:45 show today, but they tend to follow the same pattern. You know, the show starts, so like last week's Robot Revolution started with 2.247, but then 20 minutes in, we'd lost 300,000.
yeah,
You can't, if we're starting next week at 1.5 as the max, we can't lose 300,000 just willy nilly. Now, remember, John, we've got to remind ourselves Doctor Who has never had such expensive marketing in its history.
yep,
It has never been attached to a global streamer before, and yet its ratings are absolutely hemorrhaging.
yeah.
Now, that can only mean this is all style over substance, that actually, what do they say? You can't market a turd, can you? I mean, you just can't market it as gold. You just can't. It
Yeah, mate. I mean, this all adds to the argument I've had all along. When he came back and he was like launching the Hooniverse, and we're going to be the biggest ever. We're gonna take on Lucasfilm. We're going to take on Marvel. We're going to be massive. And it was like, oh, we've got the budget now to do this, that, and the other. Global domination, and all that rubbish. And it's like, my view has always been, you don't need a massive budget to make a great Doctor Who story, as so much evidence in the past proves. All you need is a solid script, great actors, and a great production team, and you can work magic and make miracles. And that's what they need to think about again. The BBC could easily make a new series of Doctor Who. I do not agree with anyone who says, oh, they can't without having a third party
it's
involved.
it's
They
just that
could.
it's just that, as you know, John, media executives, especially when they're on about £500,000, actually don't have guts.
Yeah.
They just, they just check their boxes and all the rest of it. So if Doctor Who, I'm a media executive sat at my desk with my big fat belly in my suit, and I'm reading the ratings for the week, and I'm going, oh yes, somebody's got a proposal for bringing back Doctor Who. Well, it tanked. Look at the figures. Look at the
Yeah.
figures. And I'm a scaredy cat, because all the media executives are. Nobody's going to be a pioneer. They won't bring back Doctor Who. I'm saying this now. So for every fan who says it needs resting, I agree if that was a concept, but a rest can turn permanent.
I think also my view on, you're right about a rest can turn permanent, and my view on it is that with Doctor Who, when we had the rest in '89 and we had the wilderness years, there was still a lot, and I mean a lot of love for Doctor Who. That did have it, pushing, in people's minds, and it came back, because there was a love for it, and families still love the show. Now, at this moment in time, I don't think there's that love for the show anymore. I think people think it looks tired, it looks lazy, the writing is preaching at you all the time. You know, why would anyone want to continue that? Why would anyone want to bring that back? It really will take
And
producers of with balls of steel to literally bring it back in a few years'
yeah, and
time.
I can't see that because they're not that type, are they?
No,
Everything's by formula, and if
yeah,
somebody says to them, "I've got this idea," and they'll say, "I know, but the formula didn't work, so I'm not interested in that formula." They're only interested in formulas that work, so like another DIY program with somebody naked with a hammer. They wanna mix sex with DIY, with an interior design, with a bit of celebrity and somebody who lies, traitor. This is what it is. That's all
yeah,
they're bothered about. They really don't want this expensive sci-fi niche show because they've always seen it as niche. We know
yeah.
it could be very popular, but the BBC see it as niche because they just don't get it. Now, last week, where was Doctor Who in Disney's ratings? Where was it anywhere in the world? People couldn't find it. John, last year when I was doing the ratings obsessively, Haiti for some reason like Doctor Who. It was number one in Haiti. Nope, not this year. And it's like people have all had a little look, thanks to maybe the global streaming service of Disney. They've had a look and they've gone, I don't get it. And so, like you said, we need to go back to what the hell, RTD, you understood Doctor Who. Your formula for 2005 maybe worked then, but a wise man don't repeat. You actually look at the TV landscape and you go, Game of Thrones, it was episodic. Game
Yeah.
of Thrones had kind of cliffhangers at the end. Line of Duty does it. Various programs do it. Adolescence did it. Everyone's waffling on about. So why the hell does Doctor Who have to do standalone 40,
I
43-minute adventures?
I think also a problem you have now, mate, and on that same subject is there's a very Disney Plus-ified approach now to Doctor Who, and Disney have got their approach where they'll put a season out of, say, 6 to 8 episodes, and that's their season. And Doctor Who's now going down that route as well. And again, for me, you need a longer season of Doctor Who. Um, I think in a short season, whether it's good or whether it's bad, you don't have time to develop characters particularly well.
No, no.
It's a rush job right from the first moment, and that's another thing that's a failing as well. I think I've got to do it because me and Rachel love disagreeing with each other, but she's just said that the BBC can't afford to make Doctor Who on its own. I disagree, Rachel. Come get me.
Well, she will. Once she's
Yeah,
finished work and she'll be on our stream at
yeah.
5:45, she'll have done 15 streams since
She's
yesterday. You
she's
know.
she's she's putting her knuckle duster on right now.
She's a swan. Workaholic she is. So hopefully she's right as rain for tonight. But
Yeah.
yeah, Daz Blue is worried sick now because I'm full of people asking me to be showrunner last night. I mean, I could run Channel 4 now with a naked DIY. Oh, the splinters. I'd be worried about that. But I was just going to flash up then. I was just going to show this. When I did a saloon last year, when I was looking at what I thought were my conclusions why we were losing ratings, these were some of my conclusions. What do people think? That the DEI and messaging is being continued. Oops. They viewed Disney as an opportunity to grow in ambitious effects, but they forgot that there needed to be a story and it needed to be recognizable Doctor Who. They actually kind of took their eye off the ball. Their eyes got too big for their belly. He's surrounded by those who owe him or are in awe of him. Therefore, he's making bad judgments. His mistaken claim that these are darker times, so we need a more emotionally light doctor. That's his conclusion. I think it's wrong. I think in darker times, for example, if you really want to buy into that, John, what you say is you need a strong, heroic, moral figure.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think I said to you, privately when we were talking as well, my view is if you're going to bring it back, just got to look as an example. Look at what Daryl Joyce has done recently, with his stuff.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's phenomenal. And my view is, I had an idea of, say you brought the Sea Devils back in a story, you don't do it as a world destroying event. You have almost like John Carpenter's The Fog. You have a little town, a little village on the coast. You have fog turning up everywhere. Then you have sea devils popping up all over the place, killing people on the quiet. And then in the fog on the top of a cliff, you've got a flashing police box appearing. That's the story. And that's just in my head, but that's where, quote my friend Ian David Diaz, Doctor Who needs to grow up and Doctor Who needs to
Yeah.
take itself seriously again, because it is so comical and slapstick now. I want to get back to the shows like you were talking about with cliffhangers where, oh, don't know if we're going to get out of this one,
Yeah, and I have to say, every reference has to go. I know you wouldn't have seen yesterday's episode because
Mm.
you're not going to, but there were moments like, yeah, there's the meta thing with the fans, right? Take that
Yeah.
away. On top of that, that somebody in Miami 1952 sees a police box and she goes, "Oh, it gives me hope," and it's that kind of forced kind of sentimentalism about Doctor Who. No, get on with the adventure. I
Exactly.
liked it. You're in Robots of Death. You're in lots of adventures where nobody has ever seen a police box before. Just get on with the adventure. I'm
Exactly.
sick of this kind of comment going, yes, I've always needed somebody, a wanderer in the fourth dimension to look after me.
No, the Doctor comes and goes. He does his bit. He goes. That's the end of it. He doesn't care about what's going on in the world. All he does is he makes sure that he defeats the baddies. Goes. That's it.
Raymond Williams was brilliant last night, actually, about this. There's no rules to RTD's fantasy concept. And you said this in my YouTube comments, didn't you, Raymond? Lux was set in Miami 1952, but we end up in time traveling to the present day, then back to 1952 through a flat screen TV. And as Raymond also said, they went through the fourth wall and they ended up talking to 3 British fans, even though they'd come from Miami 1952. Good point, Raymond. There are no rules to RTD's dross. And come on, people are paying a license fee. People are going, whether they're used to like Doctor Who or not, they're not stupidly going to just sit there to watch pap.
You're right. Yeah, sorry, mate.
No, I mean, it is just pap. It makes no sense. There's no cohesiveness to it. And the other thing is, I mean, and you've said it today, we've been saying this for a while. Look, there's 8 episodes, 25% of the season's already tanked through the gutter. He could have had, I think, 2 good ideas, 2 4-parters. That's fine. Now, my other version, though, John, is forget these 45-minuters. Have 16 episodes over a season. So as you were saying a few minutes ago, that Doctor Who is actually on the TV for longer.
Yeah.
We need it dominating the year a bit more. That 5-part spin-off series, there's 5 hours that could have been turned into 10 episodes of Doctor Who, 25 minutes or so. So we've got a 26-episode season. And that's taking us back to, it's on TV for half a year.
Yeah.
Get your good ideas. And let's face it, I will allow to say if Lux had been a good idea, if he turned that into a few episodes, then it's worth developing and not losing on one night.
Well, again, going back to what my point was about, you have a longer season, you can develop characters, I'm on record. I don't like Ncuti Gatwa at all. I'm not a fan of him. I don't think he's the Doctor. I've seen nothing that relates to the Doctor at all in him. But, for full transparency, I grew up in the McCoy era. A lot of people hate the McCoy era, and I love it because that was my time. But one thing that they did do on that is you had a season where when he starts off, in time and the Rani, you're like, oh dear, this is going to be a bit difficult. But, by the end of his run, you've had that development of the character because Silver's been able to develop it himself with the production team and the writers. Whereas when you're talking about, 8 episodes a season, by the time you've got to a point where you think I might be developing something, it's all done. It's over.
And there's it's the lack of jeopardy, I think, that is really destroying Doctor Who. Now, for example, I know you wouldn't have known, but last night there were 15 people trapped in a celluloid forever, dead, kind of, really. But then at the end, when the cinema blew up, they all walked out of the cinema. So basically, what is the point of me sitting down, say I'm a dad with my 2 kids, to watch Doctor Who if at the end of it, nobody dies, nothing's changed, but we just get Mrs. Flood going, what's the point?
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, again, you're right. I mean, there's no jeopardy. There's no monsters that are particularly on a consistent basis are killing people and putting that terror in little kiddies, to hide behind the sofa. But from what you just described then, that's not even an original idea as well, because, I'm a comic book fan, and Hellblazer did that for ages, where demons were basically putting people into movies, and they were being tortured and killed in movies.
It was the
In
only I thought it was one of the only effective bits where you saw one man scream while he was caught in the frame,
Yeah,
but you saw it for a microsecond. Now, like I said, that should have been the end of episode 1. That would have, I mean, can you imagine being a kid at school going, "Did you see that man? He's trying,"
yeah,
and so therefore there was half a decent idea in that episode, but because he needed to get to the conclusion, the resolution, a few Easter eggs, a tidbit with Mrs. Flood, you lose the whole effect.
yeah.
Now, if I went back to what I thought were my conclusions, why this whole era under RTD is tanking, and I would just be intrigued what you all think in the thread and what John thinks. 5, his mistaken solution that we need a selfish, emotional doctor, the Doctor Diva, not maximize the unique formula of Doctor Who. Why does Doctor Who, such a brilliant, unique brand, have to copy and emulate Buffy, Stranger Night? Why?
I
Go on.
I don't think he knows any other way to write sci-fi without the soap elements to it, and that's a problem for me. I think that, we don't need uh that emotional doctor. We don't need that at all. What we want is a character that we all look up to. Regardless of what side of the aisle you are, you come to be entertained, and you're looking up to a character who inspires everybody to do better. You know, and this, as we know from the history of the show, that doctor would go around, and he would call out things that weren't right. He would stop the baddies, and he would clear off. That's what we love about the show. We don't need to see him crying in a corner because somebody's cut their finger. We don't need any of that nonsense. We just need someone to look up to, and we don't get that now. We get a lens for people to see themselves, and that's not what Doctor Who should be.
And may I say, if you're so bothered, RTD, about these dark times and the younger generation with mental health issues, now I'm not mocking this, but having taught younger people, I think he's got it wrong. Look, if you're going to have jeopardy in the drama and people die, show how we deal with it by, moving on, being resilient, seeing the bigger picture or distracting ourselves. Just show that, as Doctor Who always did. Doctor Who wasn't a nasty piece of work, but we all quote Pyramids of Mars, where he almost pushed the dead body of the Doctor's brother away, didn't he? Just,
Yeah, yeah.
And Sarah was saying, "Oh, you're so, what, alien?" Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Sarah, I'm trying to save the universe, if you don't mind. I'm not being a sicko, but I have to save the universe. So the greater perspective we understood, and of course we understand that. And that's good for resilience and for people in dark times. That while you think all your homework's really bad and your mum's knocked you and you're grounded for the week, you realise, that there's a bigger thing out there to play for. There might be threat of nuclear war and all the rest of it. Do you know what I mean? That was the whole point. And actually, the beauty of Doctor Who was every Saturday night or whenever it was on TV, you could forget your homework, your argument with your parents, one of your friends falling out with you. You could forget all that, or having too many spots, and you could actually go, I'm in the middle of the Rebus operation for 25 minutes. Bliss.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, in classical Who, you look at it, and even RTD Who, the Doctor isn't interested in all that small stuff because he's trying to focus on the next problem to solve. He's trying to save everybody, and he said, he goes, what is it he says? I'm paraphrasing, but he says in RTD1, I haven't got time to focus on, Mickey at one point, in Rose, because he's focused on trying to stop stop the Nestines from invading the Earth. He's on to the next task. And you're right, in Pyramids of Mars, he's working the problem because he realizes Sutekh is such a dangerous villain. He hasn't got much time. He's got to move instantly onto the next thing. Nobody he's not interested in the little things. He's interested in making
And
sure the big things are resolved.
And it's not healthy to teach any of our kids or anybody suffering from mental health to say, indulge that emotion for a long time,
Yes.
dwell on it, just focus on that one emotion. You have to get on. And Doctor Who was good at that. You know, you might have had massacres in Resurrection of the Daleks. You have people dying everywhere in Warriors of the Deep, but you just have to keep going.
Yeah.
Let's get back in that TARDIS and let's get moving. I think it was a brilliant kind of subtle message to the kids, which is you've got to keep going.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, and even the time in New Who under Moffat when they did do a story about mental health, which I really enjoyed personally, you know, with Richard Curtis writing it. I remember at the end of it, you know, as the trailers were playing, you had the BBC going, you know, if you have suffered or you're suffering from mental health, please call this number. You don't get that anymore, you know. That
Yeah.
was a very, very responsible way that they did that episode, and they put the scroll on at the end to call this number if you needed help. Now it's almost saying, "Look, we see you, you know, don't worry about getting help, just carry on with it." And it's pushed to people every single day of the week. And for me, people who aren't qualified to deal with these issues shouldn't be preaching to people about how they should be living, you know?
No, because he's a media showrunner. That's what he is. I mean, he's
Yeah.
got no skin in the game at all. Now, I had a fact here because when we're talking about those ratings, that's the reason we're sat here at the moment going, where have 470,000 people gone in 7 days when RTD's got the answer to life? But I showed this one because Christmas Day in Britain is notoriously when everybody does just couch potatoes, sit around the TV. So it is the peak time to actually grab audiences. And only 5 months ago, John, or should I say 4 months ago,
Mm.
Doctor Who had a potential 4.56 million viewers avoiding it actively. And they were actually on other channels at that time.
Yeah.
That's how serious the problem is, everybody. 4.56 million people actually still were watching telly, but just thought, I'm not watching that. And yet we'd seen those trailers of the Second World War, the Orient Express train, Mount Everest. We'd seen it with the dinosaur, Doctor Who with effects. Nah, because
Yeah.
they know it's not Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And I do think, as you said, and I think of, I mean, now we'll ask a few minutes. I wanted to ask the thread and yourself, what fundamentally is the problem here? And has anyone in the thread got a question for me and John? Because I do actually think the shooty doctor clearly, and it's got nothing to do with all the usual DI crap. People have not taken a liking to his doctor.
No.
And I don't think maybe his marketing of himself has done us any favors either.
No, no, not at all. And you know, I would also say, Brendan, look, you've said on this channel that you know everyone's welcome to voice their opinions. You know, whether you sit on the left, whether you sit on the right, whether you sit in the middle. You know, everyone's free to voice their opinions. It's welcoming. You're allowed to have your say. But from looking at the comments today from people, I think I've seen one or two that have said that they really, really liked it, and they think that, you know, Doctor Who is in fine fittle at the moment. It's not. If you look at everybody that's commenting today, they're all saying, "This is getting cancelled. This is terrible. This is awful." You know, that is a massive indictment on Russell T Davies, Bad Wolf, and the BBC, you know. Disney, I'll give them a little bit of a a slack on it because, again, they might have given notes, but again, it's purely a Bad Wolf and RTD thing that's caused all of this. I don't
Well,
blame Disney for it at all.
well, good to see Alan Boyce here. The problem is bad writing. Do you know what? I was saying it in the stream last night. It is quite simple, John, isn't it? You could honestly, right, you're coming back to bring Doctor Who back after the Chris Chibnall era. You've got the Disney money, and you go, do you know what? We'll just have an expensive base under siege.
Mm.
That's how we'll start. We'll give people recognizable Doctor Who. Now, you can be experimental 2 or 3 seasons in once you've anchored the program again and got the British public, first and foremost, let's be honest, saying, yes, we've got our Doctor Who back with a likable hero, and it's lovely and safe to put our kids in front of it. Brilliant.
Yeah.
And so that's down to good or bad writing, as Alan Boyce is saying, because Base Under Siege, Doctor Who, episode 1, I think every Doctor Who fan could give it a fair punt, because basically you set the mood, you build up a little world, and you don't give everything away. It's the easy one for a writer because you don't have the answers. You just set the questions.
Yeah.
And you just show a hand. You have some heavy breathing sounds dodgy. No, you have a pterodactyl or something, sort him out. Just get everybody going, whoa, and that's bad writing because he's got experimental, taken risks, got a bit too clever, bit up himself, and then like as Garbage is saying and others, got people like Juno Dawson who have got no history in sci-fi writing on TV.
Books banned in Ireland. Yeah.
We've got a poet writing one of the episodes. In a Nigerian barber's shop. What the hell are we doing? I mean, can we just have Doctor Who, Base Under Siege, some vicious villains with expensive Disney budget who are clinical and take no crap? As Garbage says, Juno, most expensive episode ever, fully justified. Shame there will be no viewers by then.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, again, that one, as much as they're saying it's the most expensive ever, I think it's going to be the most damning episode of this series, and the one that certainly, if it's the most expensive, is not going to get a return of its money.
No, and that's a double whammy, because if you're not getting a return on your money, people aren't going to touch it in the future.
Yeah.
Phil Owens, good to see you. RTD has said that Who is a show where anything can happen. He has said that, and we disagree with him, don't we? Because he said it's quite a flexible formula, but it's not a completely anything goes formula. Because it has to be recognizable.
We've talked about this before in private, haven't we? And I've said to you about, if we were asked tomorrow to go and produce Doctor Who, we would sit in a room and we would basically work out a Bible for the show. So we would basically say, right, okay, what is core Doctor Who? What is it that cannot be touched and cannot be changed, cannot be altered? They're fixed points. That's it. So you put all of that in there, and then you can work around the edges and have your own vision of the show from there. But what they've done is they've basically gone, all of that is core to the show. We'll just chuck that out. We'll chuck that out. We'll chuck that out. We're going to put this in. We're going to put that in. By the time you finish doing that, it's not Doctor Who anymore. I joke about Only Fools and Horses, and Trigger talking about his broom. When you've swapped 14 heads for the broom and 15 handles for the broom, it's not the same broom anymore, is it? It's a completely different broom. And this is what this is. This isn't Doctor Who, in my opinion, at all. I joke, but I call it Diversity Who, because that's what it is. It's preaching a message on a regular basis. There's no escapism. There's no monsters. There's no scares. It's just very, very lazy writing, and it's boring.
And I've got one question. Imagine you're RTD and I'm the gaffer. I'm like the Lord Sugar of TV. And I just have one question to RTD before I give him the contract for season 3. And I just say to him, I was watching Lux last night. I was watching Robot Revolution as well recently. Now, RTD. Russell, dear Russell, what is the reason? Tell me the reason any viewer would watch that episode, right? And I'd be intrigued by the answer, because there's no reason to. When it was episodic, you'd have to find out what happens. Sarah Jane's fallen off a Thal rocket scaffolding. What happens next. But now you're not in that position, because, like I said, nobody dies. The Doctor isn't the hero. So why am I watching Doctor Who when the Doctor's useless? I mean, last night he was useless again. So I'm asking the thread. What is the answer that RTD could get away with? Because there isn't one, as far as I can see. There just isn't one. Why should I watch Doctor Who now? It's not the Doctor. He doesn't solve anything. It's always the companion. So basically, it's always some 19-year-old shop assistant or something. I mean, it gets down to soap opera. It's like watching some job apprenticeship or something. Nobody dies, and as we've both said, that's what Doctor Who needs. We need a bit of that. High stakes, and and we have a reset at the end, which again tells us, well, actually, maybe don't bother. Go and play footy with the lads. What's the point of watching this for 40 odd minutes if at the end everything just goes back to where it was?
Yeah, I think also, touching on that point as well. I mean, for me, like you're talking about first episodes, I would rather have, you have an intro to the show, kind of like what you used to have, where you don't see the Doctor in the intro to it. You see, the build up where, like you say, there's a base under siege, somebody's running down a corridor, a dark corridor, and then suddenly something comes out or a hand from the corner, and suddenly there's a scream. Then you get the title music, then you're into it. If you're talking about engaging audiences and doing trailers for shows, that's going to get people to put their bums on the seats because they're like, oh, okay, this looks interesting. Then you have the TARDIS land, then you have the Doctor step out. And what they've got to do, when I say about growing up as well, they've got to get rid of all this nonsense as well now, where the Doctor comes out and he goes, oh, yeah, 2027 after he has a quick sniff, and all of that
Yeah.
stuff. It's got to be, oh, like Ark in Space, where the Doctor sort of says, he goes, "Oh, we're well, we're well beyond, we're
Well, look
well
at them.
beyond that period now." It just because he's looking at the tech and he's thinking, "Oh, okay, I think we're around about this time. Let's go and have a look." You know,
Well, look at let's go back to basics. The dead planet.
yeah,
The Doctor didn't have a clue where they were, and that
no,
added to the intrigue. Who wants a smart-ass hero?
yeah,
I don't buy into the Marvel stuff. I don't buy into superheroes. I grew
no,
out of them. I don't want somebody who's all-knowing with superpowers. I want somebody who's got flaws. I want somebody who has a machine, a TARDIS, that he can't drive.
yeah.
It's fab. What a concept.
Exactly. And again, that leads into what has been one of my bugbears since it came back, for the 60th, was, and they did it a bit before, where it's like they're now making the TARDIS almost act like any other spaceship, where it just flies in, then flies into unit tower, spinning.
Oh, and it's got
The con-
feelings.
and it's got feelings. And it's like, well, the whole brilliant concept of that fantastic creation is it materializes and it dematerializes wherever it wants to. And another thing that I think they need to do if they decide to bring it back, if it does get cancelled, which I think it will in a few years, is they need to get back to the Doctor, like you were saying, not being able to control the TARDIS again, and he's not sure where or when he's going to turn up each week, and he doesn't know. He gets out the TARDIS, he doesn't know where they are, because when you talked about, was it Boom last season, and he gets out and he instantly says, "Oh, I know where I am. I'm on the planet Dudar,"
Oh, and
and it's like,
I'm a time
really?
event and all that stuff. Now, Raymond Williams here this is it. The fans are not just. It's not like we're saying we need a miracle. The miracles are actually tangibly out there. So, as Raymond Williams says, look at the new Bergerac, produced by Toby Whitehouse and starring Damien Maloney, both linked to Doctor Who in the past. Get the right people, and Doctor Who will succeed. What did we
Yep,
say about? Was it Waking the Dead?
yep,
Yeah. Toby Whitehouse was around. He did School Reunion, and we lost him from the Doctor Who circles. And he goes and writes his own series, and it was successful.
yep,
They're out there, but as people talk about the Fitzroy Tavern, they talk about this clique that has been. It. I mean, John, it is scary. They have been running Doctor Who for a third of its whole duration now.
yeah. And again, to quote a line from Doctor Who, "Don't they all look tired?" You know, and it's. I mean, again, I think this is not just Doctor Who, though. I think it's also the problem you've had in Hollywood for several years, and the current climate is, and I've been on record of saying this before. People that don't have the same viewpoints, the same views as them, they don't get the gigs. They're almost blacklisted. For me, what makes great shows and great productions is the fact that, not everyone disagrees. You have artistic differences and disagreements behind the scenes, and it mixes it all in until you come out with some fantastic creation at the end of it.
Yeah.
Now what you're getting, and you're seeing borne out with RTD2 era, is the fact everyone thinks the same. All the actors think exactly the same. Therefore, there's no pushback. Everything is golden. It's
Yeah,
going to be great. It's glorious, and what happens? It doesn't succeed.
and do you know, John, do you know, you almost can salivate at what's happening, and it's
Mm,
awful because it is actually our program. But
yeah,
when you've had the smug showrunner, the pious showrunner, you've had the two main actors so pleased with themselves. Now, remember, it's a funny look, this, because their marketing was they're so pleased with what they've produced, and it's going to pee off some of the fans because we are two people of color. All that messaging that we're
yeah.
going to be laughing at you. And we're all sat there going, but the stories, do you want to talk about them? Do you want to talk about actually whether you've made a good product? Because all you're talking about is the box ticking bit, style over substance.
Yeah,
Look, you can have,
exactly.
I don't applaud RTD having the first black doctor and then tanking the show. Just like I don't applaud Chris Chibnall having the first female doctor and writing rubbish for her.
Yeah,
That's not clever. That's letting down representation completely.
absolutely. 100%, Brendan. And again, I agree, because if you really wanted, to hang your flag to the wall on diversity, what you do from the start is you make sure it's as polished and it's as good as it possibly can be, and you get the best actors to perform those roles. But they haven't. It's almost like a low hanging fruit attempt at representation, these series. And again, people are tuning out of it. If it had been engaging, scripts, people might have stuck around a lot longer. But I'm the same as you. I, I'm relishing an announcement of it being cancelled purely because of I wanna. I've said for a while, RTD and his cronies, they deserve a loss. They need a loss to knock their egos down. But for everybody that's been a Doctor Who fan since they were kids, it's a massive kick to the teeth, because you know you've stuck with the show through thick and thin. You've always supported it, and yet you've got production teams actively attacking you for loving what you love. And again, these fans will be around a lot longer than these producers will be, long after the dust has settled, and it will come back, but it's going to take a while for it to come back, in my opinion.
You have a lot of trust there. As I'm showing people as a reminder, I think I know why well, of course, we all know why Doctor Who's been tanking. If you break down the formula for episodes like the Christmas episode, as I show you, it's just too light and frothy, not enough jeopardy. I then list, you can see here 7 reasons why: the DEI and woke agendas, not maximizing the Doctor Who formula, not making it darker for darker times. I mean, out of those 7 there, John, which one do you think is fundamentally the reason Doctor Who at this present moment is really tanking?
Well, again, it's for me. I would say 1, but I'd also say that 3 is a massive factor to it as well. So, and again, where he's talking about, I'm going to choose a few here, mate. Sorry, but where he's talking about darker times as well, I would also include that as 1 as well, because those two kind of bleed into each other, because something's happened that doesn't align with his own political beliefs. Suddenly the world is collapsing and crumbling. So yeah, I'd say probably 1 and 3 in particular. 3 would have, if 3 didn't have people worshipping him, then 1 maybe wouldn't have been so intense.
Yeah.
In my view.
Now, Lee, hello. Next week, he's the good old sage Lee, will be an indicator of that Marmite episode. Will it bring in more people or will it lose people? It all hinges on that fan scene. You see, Lee, people, I know you didn't see the episode, but people are guessing that he's laid a seed there. That yes, it did a meta minute, 4 minutes and 34 seconds. We had that fan sequence in a 43-minute episode. But my concern is it is sowed a seed, a bit like the salt in Wild Blue Yonder, for actually the finale, where there is an awful lot of talk that this series ends, because it is called the reality war. It ends with the Doctor not in reality. He's been taken out of it by Mrs. Flood or something. So in other words, it's all really up itself. It's
Yeah.
all really, that's why I said Base Under Siege. You can do it, if you do something recognizable. If you see people under pressure, they're sweating, they're dying, they're limping. That's you start to engage.
Yeah.
You pick your side and you just follow them through. And I think watching adversity is fascinating in drama, and seeing that tension. But seeing people who have all the answers, and then, as I said last night, if this ends up being the Bobby Ewan moment coming out the shower, where these two series have all been, that's like some storybook. Oh, go away. If you think that's clever, RTD and Bad Wolf, you think that's clever, you've been right. And this is what Harry Potter's coming back, but J.K. Rowling, who wrote the blooming books, is masterminding it.
Yeah.
RTD hasn't written any books about Doctor Who per se, has he? He's written some scripts, but he hasn't got this master plan. And he's decided that for 16 episodes, we're going to be going down some wild goose chase with every god. And I tell you what, these gods are pathetic. Now, this is Easter Sunday. I'm aware of what I'm saying. Gods, all powerful, omnipresent. The god of light, which actually was, I was worried about that. We had Lux as the god of light on Easter Saturday. It was, I thought the timing was a little bit dodgy, because at the end he dies and he drifts into the universe. I'm everything and I'm nothing, and I'm light and I'm everywhere. And I thought, is this meant to be religion? Where are we going with this?
I think also, mate, I think I said this last night in the chat on your stream, but for me, they're building up this Mrs. Flood character to be enormous, a major villain. But for me, in the season 1 finale, they have already diminished the powers of that villain by the fact that she was turned to dust along with everybody else by Sutek. So, I don't write. I'm not a specialist in this field, but certainly if you're going to build up a villain, surely you've got to build them up as being a powerful adversary. You don't show them on screen as being wiped out by someone else that's finished in that episode.
One of the reasons why I think it is tanking is this: if you're going to go on all these pantheon of gods, he must have sat there, in his little deck chair in Swansea and thought, oh, this is fab. Every week I can have another god. Right, calm down, take the tablets, RTD, and now think carefully. Because in 43 minutes, John, you have a god that is actually defeated.
Yep.
In 40 minutes. And it wasn't the Doctor who did it. Last week, it wasn't the Doctor who did it. So basically, you've got gods defeated by some mortal human getting a box of matches. I mean, honestly, I'm not scared of them. These gods are useless.
You're absolutely right. And, you go back to Pyramids of Mars, and I still maintain Sutek wasn't a god. He was an alien from an advanced species. So that's one thing that he got wrong. But you see that wonderful scene in Pyramids of Mars where the Doctor is literally being tortured by Sutek, and he becomes possessed by Sutek. So you build up the scales of how powerful these beings are by the fact, look, the Doctor can't fix this. The Doctor, this is beyond the Doctor. But then he fixes it at the end of the day, doesn't he? By flipping nonsense like, the death of death is life cobblers, and all of that, and it's ridiculous. And again,
and putting a god on a lead.
Yeah,
I mean, nobody had ever thought of that in the whole history of time. Now, Lance Bayless here, good to see you. We've all been here before. It's 1989 all over again, except this time the scripts aren't good, the end is inevitable, and the moment has been prepared for. And you know what, Lance? Maybe he has, if he's gone meta, and at the end of the season, it's all up itself, and it was a story. You can see why people go, well, that's why I didn't watch anymore. It got silly.
Yep. Well,
and they did say this in 89. I do remember, and it was a shame because the scripts were improving, but it had already gotten the actual reputation of being silly.
Yeah.
you know, for the time in the Rani was a terrible moment for the judgment of Sylvester's character doing the spoons and everything. When later on it got darker, more complex, and it was a
Yeah.
shame, but people's first impressions stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, it's going to be axed at the end of it. And I think I've said to you before, my view is how it'll go out at the end of it, certainly, or it should. I got the feeling was he's going to remerge with Tennant's Doctor at some point. I think you're going to see Tennant's Doctor back
He'll
because
get his undies back.
exactly, because when you've got that Jinx Monsoon episode, he even says that he's like half the man that he once was in there. So that's the only time where he says that, like almost saying that he's diminished. So that was almost like a thread at the time, I thought, of like, oh, well, he's going to have to remerge when the next regeneration comes and become one being again.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you know, you're going to have this loose thread line there for ages. But then we are talking about RTD, and I don't think he cares particularly about
No.
loose threads anymore, does he?
He doesn't like explaining. There was a joke moment last night when the Mr. Ringerdin said he's a two-dimensional character. Oh, that's the thing. What do you expect? A backstory? And I'm thinking, all these jokes are funny. They're fine. The trouble is, RTD never gives you backstory. So actually,
No.
it was a joke within a joke within a joke.
Yeah.
Divine and Dragon here says, I'm expecting Mrs. Flood to close a book as she finishes telling her story to a child as the final scene of the series. And Divine and Dragon, you may or may not know that this is almost too meta. As a 1970s Doctor Who fan, that was like you waited for Basil Brush to finish his story. And then after that, you got Doctor Who. And of course, this would be too meta if the whole of Doctor Who was a story, just like the Basil Brush. It's just too much. And I'm sorry, but once you've done it once, that will be imprinted on the British consciousness and people will not come back. You could not go back to Dallas after Bobby Ewing came out the shower.
No.
It just rewrote everything. People said, why did I commit to the 20-odd episodes of the Old Baron's Ball and all the rest of it? And if in the end it was a waste of my time, I might as well have gone out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the same with Doctor Who. If we're going to be told it's all fantasy, and then he finds David Tennant's trousers again, and then they become the one Doctor, there's no point in that because that means they could do it again. And
well, you're right. You're right. And again, season one, mate, I mean, I said to you about it and I've said to others about it, you know, it never quite worked for me because with the whole Sutek situation where he has to steal a memory TARDIS and clear off and find a spoon to put in a TV, you know, straight away in my head, I'm thinking, but there's another Doctor sat in a back garden with his TARDIS.
Yeah.
So why don't you just get in that Doctor's TARDIS and go off? You know, why didn't you ask that Doctor to be involved? Are you honestly telling me that Doctor would say, right, okay, everyone's being turned to dust. I'll just sit here and have cucumber sandwiches. No, that Doctor would be involved. So straight away, even in season one, you're talking about the fact that it just doesn't make any creative sense whatsoever. And I think the trouble you have is that I find RTD is more focused on making sure that, you know, he's got his diversity quips in the script than making sure that the actual script is tightened up and actually makes sense. And it's crazy. I mean, again, this goes to show, as we talked earlier about the fact you need somebody to basically push back on him and say, no, go away. You know, you've got the ideas of a story there, but it's not quite there. Go and do a rewrite of it, flesh it out, you know. But we don't get that because nobody is allowed to say no to RTD.
And the danger was this rush. Okay, you get Disney on board, but this rush to do 2 seasons so quickly, if he was going to write the bulk of the episodes, is too much pressure for anyone. And then you get substandard scripting. And to be honest, he thought he had a wheeze to get out of it, which is every week's a god, every week's a bit of this. And I think I can do this. No.
Yeah.
If you're going to do a series with gods, just have one god for the whole season and it builds. Like John was saying, it just builds.
Yeah.
But instead, it's like, rent a god every week. Now,
well, I was going to say quickly, you know, you talk about just jumping back to season one. My view was always, you know, which would have worked so much better is Sutek's the big bad for the finale, but you've encountered him in the first story, and the whole season is basically the Doctor trying to find allies throughout the universe to take on this big threat. You know, that builds a scale to it by the time you get to the finale. Again, this is, I'm talking if you've got a Disney budget, but you've got Daleks, Cybermen you could bring into it, because this Sutek is an alien being that is incredibly formidable that the Doctor cannot take down on his own.
Yeah.
But didn't do that. It's like, let's stick it on a box.
Yeah. David Harding in Toronto, if I were Disney, I'd be asking for an itemized list of how all their money was spent, because I'm getting the sense that it wasn't spent well. Do you know the LED screen for Boom? And is it getting used on a regular basis? I mean, you hear that the warehouse is empty and you just start to think, what is going on? Now, everybody...
Producers' money, most of it's going to the producers, in my opinion. I mean, again, I know people have said the effects look a lot better in season 2, but when I watched season 1, it didn't blow me away and make me think, oh, this is groundbreaking. It's really jumped up a notch. I felt earlier seasons of Doctor Who looked better. There were a lot of elements. I didn't like the Jodie Whittaker era, but I actually thought, some of the looks of the Jodie Whittaker era actually looked a lot better than the season 1 of Shooty.
Yeah. So obviously, we've just kind of pulled this together because of, honestly, it is shocking news. Shocking news. If you've just discovered this channel by chance today, give us a subscription. Send a recommendation to a friend. We're fairly new, and I'd appreciate that. John has his own channel, Sci-Fi Chronicles 79. So you do reviews, you do Stargate, you do watch-alongs, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for mentioning it. Yeah, having a blast on that. So doing classic Doctor Who reviews, movie reviews, and yeah, I'm having a blast with the Stargate SG-1 watch-alongs at the moment. So yeah, come check it out.
Yeah, and we had our Who night last night. On Thursday night,
Great show.
We discussed that, didn't we? Last night it was about looks, and we did our bingo scorecard. I love this, broke hack bingo with the sci-fi scorecard. And you can see where we thought we were there. But Brendan's got to go, because tonight at 5:45, I've got the full panel, the forensic ratings analysis, the analysis of whether it safeguards Doctor Who. We give it the proper ratings.
I'm the warm-up act, everybody.
Yeah, you're the warm-up act. And if you think we are dwelling too much on New Who, as you know, on Friday, we had the Doctor Who detox to detox everybody. So please, as I go away and kind of get a life for a few minutes, 5:45, tune in again, everybody, for our full review of Lux. And please like and subscribe and see us again. You've been great friends and great supports today. It's been quite enjoyable. It feels like the old days. So thank you, John. And thanks, you, The Thread, and we'll see you all later.
Take care, all.